Hello and welcome to the Practice Forward podcast. I'm your host, V. Owen Bush, and today we are joined by Desiree Edge. Hi, Desiree. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
It's wonderful to see you today. So listen, folks, Desiree Edge is a multidisciplinary interior designer, and she's the founder of Design by Des Interiors, based in Mansfield, Massachusetts. With a background in architecture, lighting design, and psychology, Desiree creates thoughtfully integrated, trauma-informed spaces that blend emotional wellness, sustainability, and functionality. Her unique hybrid approach and passion for holistic design have led to her recognition as a Wayfair Tastemaker and positioned her as a growing voice in residential and small commercial interior design across New England. So thanks for joining us, Desiree.
Thanks so much for having me.
Very unique approach and a really unique constellation of interests and specialties here going into your work, which can't wait to talk to you about. Today, our podcast is sponsored by Scandaplan. Scandaplan is a leading provider of accurate LiDAR-based building measurement and modeling services. Specializing in transforming point cloud data into precise construction-ready BIM and CAD deliverables, Scandaplan empowers architects, engineers, and designers to streamline their workflows, confidently tackle adaptive reuse projects, and make informed design decisions with clarity and precision. So anyway, Desiree, I feel like we may have crossed paths back in the day because you went to school at Rensselaer with quite a few, and you had quite a few friends of mine as your professors.
Yeah.
So it's great to see you and great to learn about your practice in New England. Are you from New England originally?
Yes, I'm originally from Massachusetts. So yeah, I just went right back home right after college.
And you're down in southeast New England, close to Rhode Island. Is that right?
Right. So I'm right on the border. So the last town out of Massachusetts going right into Rhode Island.
Beautiful area there. I'm actually not too far away from you, just floating in this island here off the coast.
Yes.
So I hear that, a lot of your design philosophy was kind of inspired by maybe like a traumatic experience you may have had. Your house burned down, or you can you explain that to me a bit?
Yeah. So when I was in 7th grade, we had a house fire. So we were living in an apartment that wasn't built to code. We found that out after the fire happened, but we were on the first floor, and my sister was cooking at the time, and we had oil that overheated. And because the apartment wasn't to code, it was all wood panels everywhere, and the fire just went so fast to the point where we couldn't do anything about it. By the time the fire department got there, it was already destroyed. So that experience, as traumatic as that is, I really learned a lot from that because of how the community came and really supported my family around that time. And that was also the same time that my father was coming back from Greece, because he also was stationed there after 9/11. He was in the Navy at the time. So it was two big traumatic experiences that happened. But I always said ever since that incident happened that I would have a purpose in my heart to help communities and other families as well, that not only maybe experiences something that traumatic, but also that just struggle with like just home care and home life, because it's something that was truly important to me. And I always felt like home was a place internally, and no matter where we traveled, like I always felt at home.
Oh man, I can't even imagine, and can't imagine what it's like to go through something like that as a family. So aside from these, unique experiences you've had, you've also had, you have a really kind of a unique pedigree. You are a trained architect at Rensselaer, right? So are you a licensed architect?
I'm not a licensed architect. No, I went right into lighting design right after
I see.
college.
Right. So, but anyway, you do have that incredible foundation that you got at Rensselaer, which is, I would say, a very highly conceptual architecture department.
Absolutely.
And then you also did some work in China. Is that right? Where you
Yes, I studied abroad in China when I was a junior or my fourth year.
And that was with a focus on sustainability.
Yeah, sustainability and urban planning. Yeah, so very different than I know what I'm doing now.
Right. So it's a wide range. You got architecture,
Yeah.
sustainability, lighting design,
Yeah.
and then also, you know, it sounds like you had a minor in psychology, and
Yes.
you seems like you're applying a lot of that to your work as well.
Yes, yes. And I didn't mention that with the lighting design, I came under the LRC program at Rensselaer. So that's how I got into lighting. So
Got
yeah,
it.
Rensselaer really prepared me for, I feel like, all of those disciplinaries and made me an interesting hybrid of a designer.
Sure. So, I mean, getting back to this experience you had, it sounds to me as if your design philosophy really emphasizes interiors as emotional sanctuaries, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
So how did that experience with your house burning down shape this approach?
Yeah, so, well, for one, before I even became an entrepreneur, I realized how much trauma I had to really face when I started my practice, because I didn't realize how personal this journey was going to be as a solopreneur, because my parents were also entrepreneurs too. So I did see that lifestyle a little bit from a distance. You know, as a child, like, you know, there's only so much you're seeing, but at the same time, I saw the immediate impact that like that home life balance had on my family. And when I started sharing things that I was doing in my own home, I immediately, like, people were gravitating to me because I was just so open with sharing some of the struggles that I was experiencing, from becoming a mom to also moving from an apartment to a house, and then dealing with letting go of like furniture and decor and things of that nature that had an emotional attachment to me from the traumatic experiences. So all of those things really made me think about like how the human psyche is being connected to these pieces that are having, for one, a big impact on how we show up in the world, but two, also generational things too, because there were some things that like my family was passing down to us that maybe was something that I didn't love, but I knew that maybe my husband had emotional attachment to that thing. And so I had to make it work in my space. And I didn't realize how common of a struggle these psyche things were for people. And so this is something that I talk about every single day with clients, because I find that everyone is battling with this to some extent, like letting go of the things that maybe doesn't serve them anymore. But they know it doesn't serve them, but they're having trouble letting go because of whatever it is that they're internally facing.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah, you have to really dig deep and dissect it to understand.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You walk into a space and you're like, well, why is it this way? But I mean, every object in someone's house has some kind of story behind it, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
So when you shifted from architectural design to interior design entrepreneurship, what was the most unexpected challenge there? What really what challenged you in a way that you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, I think my most challenging thing was being more intentional with the minor details. And I say minor details, meaning like, you know, every detail does matter, but when it comes with architecture, I feel like sometimes it felt like it was bigger systems, right? So it was a lot of like the structure and, you know, all of the bigger surfaces of stuff that we were doing. But when it came with interior design, it was more tactile things, and all of those things influenced something else. And then you had to also understand, like, well, why is that thing influencing that thing? And then it all became this like small collectible pieces that make the bigger picture. And I think that drastic change within that scale and that mindset shift was a little bit of a learning curve that I had to understand, because in the beginning I felt like I was overly designing. And when you start overly designing, then it's like you lose the whole character and the whole important pieces that you really want to highlight.
Sure.
And then you have to scale back again and be like, well, why am I overly designing, or why am I overly decorating? Like, where is that coming from? So then I had to like unlearn some things and then learn it again. And so, yeah, it's been a give and take, I feel like. And with architecture too, it felt like it was just so techy, because I had to understand, you know, how systems worked on a different level than I did with interior design.
Sure.
And I didn't learn that in school. Like, that was something that I learned, you know, just literally diving in, being in it, and then, you know, also continuing my education as well, taking classes where I can to learn stuff about interior design. I'm always a student, and I feel like that has helped me to be a problem solver in that sense. Because every project, every client, they're all different, and so you just have to be ready. And so I always say every opportunity is just an opportunity to learn something different.
And so, you know, getting started as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, you know, what, you know, I'll also mention to my audience, I mean, obviously, you're a female, you're a women-owned business, and
Yes.
you're also African-American, I take it. And that means that you're, you know, a Black-owned business, which, you know, unfortunately, for some reason, we see not as many as I'd like to see in this world of architecture and engineering, and design. And, you know, we just had my friend Sean Hamlin on last week. It's another Black-owned architecture firm. And so anyway, I don't know. I see in this world that there are a lot of incentives, right, for both women-owned businesses and for minority-owned businesses to kind of get a foothold in the industry. And yet I don't really see that many Black-owned businesses really making that much traction in this industry. I mean, you know, we have hundreds and hundreds of customers, and the Black-owned businesses I could count on one hand. Anyway, I was just saying, like, what kind of resources have you found to really help you get off the ground? And what kind of resources are you looking for? And what do you wish was out there for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been finding those resources, because even though they're all out there, it could be a little bit overwhelming to know, like, well, is that legit? Or what is even this resource? Like, I wish there was some kind of hub or something where someone could like guide, I guess, us to say, like, here, this is what's available, this is what this means. Because for me, I felt like I was isolated where I am, because I think I can count on one hand actually how many Black interior designers that I know that are in just Massachusetts alone. And that was one of the common things that was coming up a lot of times, even within my social media. Like, people were literally typing in Black interior designer near me, and I was popping up because I was using the hashtag. So like all those things, like, I realized that there is a need out there for people wanting to see different perspectives, because I think that we all bring something very different and unique. And I mean, a lot of my clients, that was one of the first things they say, I reached out to you because you were just so different, and you were a fresh breath of air, and also you being a family, like, all of those things attracted me to you. And so the resource that have helped me is my networking resources. So I'm in a lot of business women groups. I'm in a lot of mom groups, because that's one of the things I'm passionate about. And I'm also in design groups too. I'm still a part of NCAR. I'm still a part of like the industry standards like IDS and IDA and things of that nature. But even still, to that point, it's like there's so many things out there, but there's no direction on like what to truly do, because it's so much a little bit. So it could be a little bit overwhelming. So I just wish there was some kind of, I guess, plan or coach or something, I don't know, to say this is what this is going to help you with, and what the needs are to meet you there.
Well, I've got an idea for you, Des. It's called ChatGPT.
Heck, you know what? You might be onto something there. I've been using that.
Basically, I created a custom GPT that was, you know, designed for me, at least for my purposes. It was designed to completely understand the whole procurement process and the whole RFP process and all these very elaborate, intricate government agencies and how they work and how you access them. To me, it's all like to me, it's all massive bureaucracy, and my eyes just glaze over when I start going through these government websites. But I was able to kind of program a GPT to become an expert in this stuff, and then just give me real simple answers. So,
well, then I need to know what you did, because clearly that's exactly what I need.
I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline, and I can even program a custom bot just for you.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, your work is heavily influenced by your background in psychology, right?
Yep.
And your, as we discussed, your own personal experiences. So how do you integrate these psychological insights practically into your design process?
Yeah, so because there are so many things out there when it comes to psychology, the first thing is always understanding my client. That is one of the biggest things, because if I don't understand truly what my client needs and also what their goals are, then I can't really say, hey, this is the strategy that we should use for your space, and all the things of that nature. So I really am very intentional with getting to know my clients on a very personal level. And, you know, sometimes I warn them about that too. I say, hey, see me as your designer bestie, because that's really where I need our trust to be in order for you to open up to share all the things you didn't even think about. Like, I even learn about marriage dynamics. I mean, I learn about even their children dynamic, like all those things, which is more personal sometimes than I felt like I was doing with architecture and even lighting design too. It's mainly because thinking about, like, with interior design, you know, they're using these furniture and these things in there, and they're holding these gatherings and things of that nature. And so whenever I'm talking about psychology, it's, for one, things of like color theory, you know, what's the goal in the space? Like, how can we incorporate color to help enhance your mood or whatever that is? And then it's a matter of also, like, what kind of textiles can we use to do XYZ? It's all those kind of things. So because I have a concentration in human factors in design within psychology, I also understand, hey, like, the decision that we're making within these design choices are going to do this in the space. And I had that conversation in the early phases before I even dive into any design work. Because once you understand that, then I know I can nail this design, because now I'm hitting all the parameters that the client is expecting me to hit.
Yeah. Well, hey, we live in a very stressful world, and and you're designing spaces as emotional retreats for people.
Yeah, I call them the sanctuaries. Yeah, this home sanctuaries.
Yeah. So, so can you expand on that a bit? How do you balance the psychological depth with the aesthetic appeal?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because there's a little bit of give and take here. So the first thing, and the ultimate goal, is always obviously going to be like, okay, I know what my clients are struggling with, because a lot of times they try and do it themselves. And so whenever I'm saying, okay, well, if you tried it yourself, what have you done, and what have you noticed that you don't like, and things of that nature. And so I have to balance, for one, meeting those needs, but two, a lot of them also want the space to look beautiful as well. Like, a lot of them struggle with, like I mentioned earlier, where you're like overly decorating or have too much stuff, or it becomes too cluttered, right? So I then end up having to peel back the layers a little bit, and then having them declutter and go through that whole entire process. And then that alone is a whole nother psychological exercise that you learn a lot about just why people gravitate to certain things. And so I always say, though, that those things tell an important part of that person's story within their home. And that's another way to add character too, so that we're not creating cookie cutter designs everywhere, because that's like the last thing you want to do, especially with interior design. Like, you don't want to just copy and paste stuff. So I always say, like, hey, listen, let's figure out, for one, the needs that we need to meet. Then also, two, how we can make this space beautiful. Like, what are some things that you are visually appealed to, and not only visually appealed to, but have you been inside that style before? Because I know from my experience, when I've watched shows or whatever, I'm thinking I love a certain style, and then I would live in it, and I'm like, oh, I actually hate this. And then you realize, like, oh, this actually is not who I thought I was, or anything that nature either. So I think that blending those two worlds are one of the things that sets designers apart as well, and how well you can execute that, because it is challenging to make it pretty and functional all at the same time and check off all the other boxes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say the most common complaint I've heard on this show with all my wide variety of guests is people kind of lamenting, I guess what they call the Instagram effect, where clients are entirely focused on visual, and they think your process is entirely about visuals. Whereas, I mean, it's about a lot more than that, right? It's
totally.
I mean, there is that superficial visual quality, but as you're describing, that arises from a much deeper process.
Absolutely. And you have to be careful with that, because I always say too, like, you don't want your home to feel like a museum where you can't touch anything, you can't do anything in the home. Like that, especially if you have a young family, like, it's unrealistic. And I think that's what people are setting themselves up for, is like unrealistic, like kind of like not failure, but kind of in a way, you are setting yourself up to fail if you're just trying to go off of how something looks. And you're missing out on a lot of opportunities that can come from your decisions and your investment. Like, if you're going to spend that much money to just make it look pretty, then, I mean, yeah, we can all have one room in our home where it's like the room you don't touch, but then it's like you're losing out on opportunities, I feel like. So I try and get people away from that, and I try and share my personal experience with falling into that trap and what that looks like. But too, I think a lot of people are making money off of it as well. And so that's something that we are trying to be careful about when we're sharing just pretty spaces. We want to be able to also share the whole story, like share how you got there and why it also is not just pretty, but also functional. And I think that's something that the interior design industry, we're kind of going back and forth with a little bit, because of course, we want to win awards. We want our work to look good in our portfolios, but at the same time, we're also trying to meet these clients' needs as well. So I think if we can share the full story, I think that will help that perception a little bit.
Right. Oh, okay. So Des, a good segue. So speaking about winning awards, so you've been selected as a Wayfair Tastemaker.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and what is a Wayfair Tastemaker?
Yeah, so a Wayfair Tastemaker is part of the Wayfair company. So we are designers that they selected to partner with. We have our own, we call it storefront, but it's a selection of Wayfair products that we love, whether we've used it on projects ourselves or we love that aesthetic. But it's a way to also help guide customers to a certain style, so they're shopping from a designer storefront. And then over certain lengths of time, we can also create themed storefronts. So like I have an outdoor one right now for the summer season. That's a curation of products that I love. And it also helps people like be able to source items that are also good quality pieces, because that's one thing that people struggle with when they also go to Wayfair, is like there's so much product that's out there, and there's also so many brands, and so they just have trouble searching for certain things. So we really try and help bridge that gap a little bit for the consumer experience.
No, I think once again it gets back to that Instagram effect, and I'm guilty of it myself. I've bought a lot of like really cheap stuff on Wayfair because it looked good, and then I fell for it a couple months later. And, so you've described sustainability as culturally sensitive. So, and you do have a background in sustainability. I'm not sure how much of that you actually use in your practice now, but what's a moment when sustainability practices challenge your design intuition?
Whenever I was trying to work on a budget for something, because honestly, if a client does not understand that real materials like real wood, solid wood, things of that nature, they're going to be more expensive than like an MDF kind of thing. They don't understand why, or even what that material feels like, or understand how it performs. They don't understand why it's worth the investment. And I go back and forth on this a lot, because a lot of things that happened during COVID is that so many people were buying cheap stuff and also making cheap stuff. And so there's just so much now. We have this recyclable culture of just all this stuff. And then it's like, where does this stuff go when it breaks down, right? It's like what they end up recycling it or bringing it somewhere, but then still that's impacting our climate, our culture, all the things. And so I really do try and educate my clients on materials that we are incorporating for that purpose, because I do think that's important. And two, you want to have longevity in your pieces. You don't want things falling apart like a year later. And we see it all the time when we're putting things together, because some of the stuff you have to put together yourself, especially if it's coming from a place like Wayfair or whatever. If it's not already pre-assembled, then you really understand, well, how these joints connect together. The cheap fasteners that are out there, all that stuff that makes the product, it all influences how that product performs. Just like when we're building buildings, like, if you're using cheap labor and cheap pieces, then it may not last as long as something that, is meant to perform well and have the properties to be able to uphold to that standard. So I think it's just a little bit of a learning curve and education for the everyday consumer who maybe doesn't know or understand why those things matter. And I think that's part of our jobs as professionals is, educating them and understanding why this is more expensive and why it is the way that it is. But I really am trying to be intentional with that in my jobs. But it's so hard when the things are more expensive and then you're trying to figure out, well, how do I make cuts in certain things? And that's where I have to draw the line in some things and say, hey, maybe it's worth us waiting on doing maybe another part of the job so that you can truly invest into the pieces that'll last for years to come.
Sure. Well, unlike a lot of other interior designers, you have a very kind of tech forward pedigree, having gone to Rensselaer and your experience in China and working with lighting. And so I'm sure you're keeping a pulse on, emerging design tools, emerging technologies. And how do you determine which design tools or technologies to adopt and which ones to consciously avoid?
Well, for one, it's going to be on for how easy it is to use that software or whatever it is. If it's something that I'm going to have to sit down and like really dive in to relearn that thing, I just don't have the time to sometimes do that. So it has to be something that I can do relatively quickly. Like I said, and I'm pretty fast with learning software in general, because I've been doing drafting and 3D modeling in school. So, I'm just naturally keen to be able to pick those things up pretty fast. But if it's something that's really clunky where I know that it's going to be time consuming, it's going to make things more difficult, then I do try and avoid it. And I know people are going to probably scream at me when I say this one, but I honestly don't use Revit. And that's like one of the big industry standards for interior designers and architects as well. And it's not that I have anything against Revit. It's just that for the kind of work that I'm doing, I haven't had to go to that extent to use Revit personally myself. I will outsource that kind of thing. But there are some times where people are scared of learning softwares that are like that, where it's that detailed and, trying to understand how to do drawing cuts and all the things of that nature out of softwares like that. But I think it's a great software, a great program, one that I definitely would love to do more of in the firm, the way that when I grow a little bit more. But I'm seeing a big tick on the AI whole rendering thing, and it's driving me bananas when I'm seeing it, because I automatically know when it's an AI render, because something is always off in it. So I'm very cautious of even using AI to that extent, even though I do know there are benefits to it when you're entering the prompts correctly. But there's also just a missed opportunity sometimes when we're not going in and doing that work ourselves. I feel like this is going back to my whole early architecture school days, when we were saying how the art craft is kind of missing now with that hand drawing thing. That technique is now a technique that's dead, because now it's the computer has controlled that whole world, and then you miss out on important details that you wouldn't normally know when you're actually hand drawing it yourself, because you're so into it and you understand all the details going into it. And then some of that gets lost and it gets translated into the computer. So we just have to, I think, sometimes be careful with some of those technologies that we're using if we're not understanding what they're doing. And I think having that checkpoint is going to make a big difference. Yeah.
Well, hey, I can imagine as a solopreneur, there's so many things for you to be focused on. Part of the reason we founded Scandaplan, so that folks like you can get started with existing conditions and really just focus on the design work.
Yeah.
And so, so you have this, getting back to this psychology-based informed process that you take. So has your commitment to this kind of psychology and trauma-informed design, has it ever conflicted with, you know, your clients' requests or the trends in the market?
Yes. Every single time I do a project, something conflicts to some extent. I would love to say it was a perfect scenario where it was not as difficult to balance that. But yeah, I have found that there's been a few projects that have also triggered traumatic responses from me from past experience I've had.
Okay.
Even certain scents of things, like how something smells. Like, I think that's one of the things that people realize too. Like, you know, like when you're a child, there's certain memories you have connected to certain like scents. It could be for one of the things for me is like a certain candle. If I remember like a candle burning and my grandmother had burning in her house, something like that, it immediately reminds me of like my grandmother or some kind of memory I had with her. And but sometimes it can have a negative traumatic response too. So it just really just depends on what that is. But yeah, I've had clients in certain projects where I've had different problems that I had to solve, and I had to figure out like, oh my gosh, I've lived this situation before. So now how like what was I feeling in these moments that this client is experiencing exactly what I experienced? And so I feel like sometimes I'm coaching myself through my clients with certain situations. And it's similar to when you deal with those that are like empty nesters a little bit. Like I have a lot of clients that are like empty nesters and they're transitioning their kids moving to college and things of that nature. My mom was my first client. And I remember like having to learn what that felt like letting go of your child, but also like what that was to have all the stuff that this child, you know, had, and part of your memories and all things like that nature. And how do you get them to a place where they can be in this beautiful chapter that they're in and embrace that chapter and what that looks like. So for me, that was one of the bigger traumatic responses because it was someone that was so close to me, and I saw how big of an impact that was having on her behavior every day with like in her home space, like holding on to stuff because me and my sister were out of the house now. And then also stuff we had from that fire that was still in the house still. And I'm just like, wow, like that's a big thing that I know a lot of people are struggling with.
Yeah. I mean, though, as you're talking, I'm just kind of thinking back on my house, and I'm on my way to becoming an empty nester, but you know, I'm not quite there yet, but I do sort of look around. I'm thinking it's like, oh, okay, we got that thing when my daughter was 5 because that, and we got that when she was 10. And so it's like, you know, things move so quickly during that period. And it's almost like you need a completely different house every couple of years. But you know, it's interesting how things just, it's almost like the longer things are around your house, the less you see them. And then they just start becoming invisible, right?
Wow, that's a good point. You're so right about that. And it's honestly like sometimes we put things on top of those things, not realizing we're even doing it either. Because it's like they're just like they're there, but like they're not there. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it's so easy to overcrowd and over decorate and all the things of that nature, because you're just so used to that behavior. And that's a psyche thing too. That you know, you literally become a part of your environment. Like we always say, like too, another thing is like when you're inside or your brain is cluttered, it manifests into your space a lot of times. And you don't even realize you're doing that, but it's like whatever is inside, it comes out. It has to come out in some kind of way. And a lot of times it's coming out in things like that, like within your home spaces. I mean, your body is also a home as well. So it's like if you're doing the same thing with your body, more than likely the same thing's happening in your home space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the physical things in our homes are very often some kind of physical representation of memories that we have, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, like let's say as you have a child and that child grows up, we just keep gathering more and more memories and more artifacts and things. And then, you know, at a certain point, Some people say like, old people start having Alzheimer's and things like that. They just have too many memories. They can't take it. It's like the brain is full. It's not.
Yeah,
it's like living in a hoarder house. And so I suppose as people are becoming empty nesters or aging in place, I think being surrounded by 50 years of memories bearing down on you all the time is maybe sometimes healthy and sometimes maybe unhealthy.
Yeah, I think it's like a comfort thing too.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like living by yourself, like then it's something something that and familiar with as well, like because you have the the emotional connection to some of those things, so it's very easy to just let things kind of be the way that they are, because that's the one thing that's not changing. Like everything else outside of your home is changing, and it's changing very fast, but one thing you can control is what's inside your home. And so if that is all the same, it's another way of way of having like stability to some extent, like something that's familiar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's inspiring to me because you have, this amazing pedigree, and you probably could have gone out and started designing skyscrapers if you wanted, but
I wanted to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I used to draw them all the time in my sketchbook. Skylines. I knew New York skyline, all the things.
But it sounds as if you have really, focused on what's really important to you, right? Which is primarily about family, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, balancing your own, entrepreneurship and your own family responsibilities is really a central part of your story, right?
Yeah.
You just said your first client was your mom, right?
Yep.
And so how does that tension shape your approach to scaling your practice and growing your practice?
I struggle with this a lot. And I think I struggle with this a lot because it's so easy to compare myself to other people and say, oh, I should be a lot further along because they started when I started. And even though our journey may not be the same, like I feel like I should be doing this and this. And like, I feel like that's a trap and that's a scary thing to do. So I always try and check myself. But also too, like I started my firm when I had an 8-month-old baby. So, I mean, I was still going through postpartum, still learning like what it was like to have a baby in the house. And also at the same time, I literally see my business as like kind of like my child in a way. Like I have to remember, like it's only 6 years old, right? So like it's a first grader. And I try and see it that way, because that's the way my mom brain like works and compare. But having that balance also makes me also be more playful in my designs too, because I'm always around playful things within my home. I work out of home sometimes. I do work out of my studio as well sometimes, but I have a different level of purpose now, because I realized that my child also grew up with my business, and then I started all over again with having another child a year ago. So I guess it's a cyclical thing happening in my life. But that balance is very hard. It's very hard to balance being a full-time entrepreneur and also a mom full-time. But that's also why like my parents are crucial in my business. I mean, they work in my company and they help us out. My husband does as well. Like all of us are a team. And I think that is really what has helped us and kept us grounded. Because there's a lot of time like my kids are on job sites with me. Like that's their world. I mean, I kind of see it as like how like the Gaineses are, you see their kids growing with their projects. It's like the same situation. Like I have videos of me literally holding my child while I'm like doing decor in a job site or whatever it is. So I think that it's an important thing for moms to also know, hey, if this is a dream of yours, that you don't have to let your dream go. Like you can make it work. You can have a vehicle that allows you to have that flexibility and that freedom that you need. Because that is literally what I've created with the firm. If there's days that I know that my son has to do something, then I have the vehicle to be able to say that, I can move things around and shift things around, and I have that flexibility, and that helps. But there are many times that I'm working late in the night, but that is normal too. As we know, like in the design industry, when deadlines are what they are, there's late nights that happen, but just being able to juggle that and figure that out, and but still also being have time to be playful and be able to have time for yourself and take care of yourself. All those things matter as well. So it's hard having balance, but every day I just say take it day by day and choice by choice.
Well, I'm a single dad. I can't imagine how I could have ever done it if I had, you know, a regular work schedule, a 9 to 5 work schedule or something like that. I don't even know how. It's only hard. It's only been, you know, my own entrepreneurship that has allowed me to kind of create a flexible schedule so that I could really, you know, work it around the needs of, you know, raising my child.
Yeah.
So
I relate to that. I love that.
So you have, I'd say you're kind of an expert in what we call emotional wellness in spaces, right? And so when you have, what do you think, what do you see, what kind of blind spots do you see in the overall interior design industry that is still kind of not really helping people have that emotional wellness in spaces?
I think we like touched on the surface a little bit of this when we were mentioning the downfall a little bit to like social media and like like following trends and things of that nature. Because I think that can be very dangerous. And I think what happened for so long was when that whole culture started in the beginning of like now interior designers being celebrity, like interior designers. I saw that it was a lot of the same repetitious things happening over and over again, that I felt like people were kind of feeling like they were in a box to some extent, where it's like, this is what we were seeing, so this must be what is the thing to do. And that's very dangerous because, for one, design is not a one size fits all situation. Like, and we can't just copy and paste things either. And two, is dangerous too, because then we start having people think that they can do what we're doing. And why do you have to go to school to learn that if I could just watch it on TV and just duplicate whatever they're doing? And that's really dangerous too. That DIY culture can be dangerous. And I think that there's a reason why there are professionals out there for certain things, right? Like, there's a reason why you would hire interior designers, just like the reason why you would hire an architect. Like, there's certain things you just wouldn't do yourself. And I think that one of the blind spots we have to be very careful of is just that part of it, that there is not only an art form here, but there is a reason why we're doing a lot of the things that we're doing. And it does take a lot of that education to know what we're doing, and a lot of that practice to do that as well. And I think the blind spot we just have to also be careful of is just being truthful to that. Because I think that when we have the social media and that everyone thinks that they can just do what we're doing and all the things of that nature, and then like, why would I hire someone or a professional when I could just do this? Then once again, we're going back to that. Then we see design being stagnant and being lost and not being able to explore all the possibilities. So.
Yeah, it's you know, to be a good designer, it feels like you have to really be an omnisensorial thinker, right? And as you were saying, like smells are very evocative of memories. A lot of the other senses that are not the visual sense are really unlocking memories a lot more. And so, you know, and now, like I was saying about the Instagramification of the world, it's sort of, you know, it's almost like everyone's living in a movie set now. You know, it looks great in the background, but then if you touch it, it falls over, it breaks. It's like our world is turning into like the Temkin village of, you know, we're not actually living in functional spaces.
So true.
And you also have to be really an experiential thinker, right? So it's as a lot of designers have reminded me, it's really about the empty space in between all the objects as much as the objects. And it's about the environment that you create, with the experience of being there, which includes all 5 senses. So how do you envision these kind of trauma-informed design principles that you've been focusing on, how do you envision that evolving within any kind of mainstream design practice?
I think it's going to be evolving based on really like how our culture kind of evolves. I feel like we're in this weird, like, kind of phase a little bit, because I think that the impact that really like that COVID culture had on us has really shifted just so much within design. And to see that, you know, it's now like 5 years ago, right? Like we're still seeing that aftermath coming out a little bit. And it is good that we are starting to see more people wanting to explore different things. Like we said, now the color gray is dead. Like that was a trend that was going for so long, but now people want to now embrace like more colors and even more like grounded, like environments, because they realize, oh my gosh, being outside is actually therapeutic. And I want to be able to bring my outside inside my home. All those kind of I would say trends, but like they're things that also aren't going to be going away. Like our world is always going to be colorful, right? Like I hope so. I hope one day that, like, you know, God doesn't just say we're going to be all in black and darkness, but those are things that we're always going to try and incorporate into our spaces, because as human beings, we crave those things. We crave to be around color and around light and around outdoor spaces. There's a reason why those things are the way that they are. And so, I think that once we as a culture start to experience different things, I think that's when it's going to make a shift in design again. And I actually say, I think that right now, I actually love where design is going, because I love that we're starting to think outside the box a little bit more. And I love that people are starting to embrace more things, and they're tired of seeing the same over and over again now. And we're seeing now new emerging principles come up, and we're like, oh, you know what? That I would have never thought to put that pattern with that pattern now, or whatever it is. Like, we're thinking now outside the box, and more people are embracing it. And I love that, because now us designers too, we're able to be more expressive. And I think people in general are able to be more expressive in their home spaces too. And I think that's a really good thing. I think that we're all going to be able to learn more from each other by doing that.
So I guess we could call this holistic design, right? Where you really, So, I mean, in terms of, you know, holistic design, do you feel like there are some like trends coming out that you're kind of skeptical of?
Yeah, I'm not one to really embrace the whole, like, I don't even want to say this out loud, but I'm going to say it. Like the whole like maximalism idea. Like sometimes I just see it as like, are we being intentional with that, or are we just vomiting in a space? Like, and I think that's where you have to be careful when it comes to certain things. Because like, once again, we mentioned this on it, like, you know, it looks pretty on Instagram, right? Like it looks gorgeous in some spaces on how certain people do things. But when you're living in that, it's like a whole different vibe. And maximalism is being really embraced now, and I think it's being embraced too, because I think it's a part of like a reason where now people have a reason to hold on to things. And it's like, but are you truly like, why are you still holding on to those things? Or are you just trying to make it pretty because now you have more stuff? Like that whole stuff culture, I think, could be very dangerous if we're not intentional with why we're doing it. And so I say be careful with kind of that kind of stuff. I mean, and the same thing with minimalism too, to the point where it's like too minimalistic. It's the same idea. It's like on the opposite spectrums, but it's like, if it's too minimalistic, then are you still also losing out on opportunities as well? Like there's that give and take that we're trying to figure that out. So yeah, I think when you're like on those two very different spectrums is where it's like, we have to be careful.
Well, I mean, all the more reason to really take a very customer-centric approach and a very psychology-centric approach as you do. I mean, for me, like I can't get any work done unless I have a messy desk. I need to have like a certain amount of chaos around me in order to get in the zone. And other people want to have like everything completely clean and immaculate, and that's how they work best. So I think it's just different for everyone. And I think, you know, like we were saying earlier about, you know, clutter and the amount of things that are in your house. I mean, I think, you know, I just feel like some people's minds, you know, store memories differently and can handle Lots of, chaos and maximalism, more than others,
Yeah, that's true too. And being careful too with who they're living with, because that can be conflicting worlds too.
Sure.
And I have that happen, oh my gosh, all the time, really. Like, because a lot of times two couples are opposites a lot of times. And so
Right.
it's like trying to find that balance.
Do you try to harmonize that, or do you try to find spaces where the man can be the man and the woman can be the woman?
I do a mixture of both. But I do try and have both of them involved in the very beginning. And I try and at least have some clear direction on who is the decision maker, but at the same time, if that, I try and find like who uses that space. And like I'm going through this right now with a client because these are empty nesters and they have very different styles, but they also have separate rooms because their lifestyle is like that. Like he wakes up super early in the morning. She stays at home most of the time, but she's also very sensitive to sound. So there's often times where they may not be sleeping together during the week, the work week, but they're together like on the weekends, things of that nature. So like she has her own bedroom. He doesn't have his own room per se, but he has areas within their room that is more for him and geared for him. And every client is different. There's some clients where the man wants his own man cave. Like my husband's like that. Like our basement is his man cave. And like I say, that's his space and that's his place to go and all the things. But it really just truly depends on the client, and it's sometimes I think we have to have that happy balance to have the space be harmonious so that both of them can be in the same space together and feel like it's a reflection of both of them. But I do think that everyone should have a place to go to that is a reflection of just them, so that we can decompress and say, I feel like myself when I'm in this space and I know where to go and I need to just recenter.
Yeah. Well, if you could revisit your first interior project with your current understanding of psychological design, now that you've worked with so many customers so intimately, so what would you do differently now?
Well, my first project I mentioned was my mom's office. And now that I see that room almost every time I go over there, which rarely happens for projects in general. Like you don't usually go back to revisit projects that often, unless you're going back there to do a refresh or something like that nature. I would say that I wish that I would have asked a little bit deeper questions as to why certain behaviors were happening the way that they were, because what I'm finding, and my mom's probably going to watch this and she's going to be like, you said this on our podcast, but I'm realizing that some of those behaviors that I thought that I had solved in the beginning is repeating again, where like I think that she just doesn't have the right furniture to hold some of her office stuff, so it's getting cluttered again. And she's in a really small space too, right? So like when you have a really small cramped space, then you do have to think a little bit outside the box and how you're creating those multifunctional storage systems so that you can hold those things. But if you don't truly understand how a person uses the space or is going to use the space, and you just put in what you think is going to be pretty, then it's like they're going to fall back to those bad habits because they're not going to have a place to put those things. And that's exactly what ended up happening in my first project. Like I realized that she has so many books and so many papers and things of that nature, but I didn't design anything to really hold those items where that it needed to be held or whatever it is. And so now it's like, I need to go now revisit this project again and reevaluate it again, because I don't want her living obviously in like things being all over the place. But I do think that is important, like really digging deeper into really understanding, how do you work? How does your brain work? And you mentioned it earlier, like you like working in messier spaces. And I'm like one of those people where I'm like, if I see mess, I can't think. The complete polar opposite to you. But if I don't understand that, and I don't know a client is like that, and I project my working style onto you, then it's not going to work, right? Because then you're going to go right back to what you're used to doing. And so I think that just being careful on knowing those things up front is helpful.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So Des, tell me about where you see your practice going in the next 5-10 years. What does practicing forward mean to you, and where would you like to take this?
I eventually want to have some more people on my team to also share different perspectives, because as I mentioned, I'm primarily the solopreneur in the sense that I'm designing all the things myself. But I found specifically this year, it was my first time hiring interns, like college interns. So I call them the new blood, young blood. And it was so like refreshing to just hear their perspectives, see their design decisions, being able to bounce ideas off and collaborate together. I think that's something that I really want to be able to cultivate in my firm. And I think a lot of interior design firms eventually try and get to that point, right? Where it's like, you know, you have to be able to hire more help in order to grow anyway. You want to be able to have that balance too. But I think that collaborative effort, especially in interior design, it just makes your designs more powerful, and you can be able to bring a lot more diversity to your firm. And I think that's something that I'm definitely intentional with doing in the next 5 years. I don't want to keep being a solopreneur. I think that there's just so much opportunity within my firm alone to dive deeper into these concepts and these things. And I want other people to be able to explore in the way that I'm also exploring. And I want to be able to create a safe space for people to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's very exciting, and I'm sure you're going there. Looks like nothing's stopping you here, Des.
Thank you.
So anyway, folks, please check out Desiree's website. It's designbydesinteriors.com. And as you were saying, Des, you have a couple areas on Wayfair with some curated collections as well. How would people find those?
Yeah, so there's actually a link when you actually go on our website. You can actually click the Wayfair picture. It goes right to our storefront. Also, too, in all of our social media, within our links, there's also a link to our Wayfair storefront shop as well.
Okay.
But yeah, and you can also Google it, I think, as well. If you Google my name, I think it pops up.
Desiree Edge. Please Google it and visit designbydesinteriors.com. So thank you, Des, for joining today. I hope to catch up with you soon. And
yes.
And please check out Desiree's work. It's really quite inspiring. And once again, this is the Practice Forward podcast. We're sponsored by Scan to Plan. That's scan2plan.io. And looking forward to talking to you again soon, Des. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you so much for this. This is great.
All right. Yeah, it was really fun. All right. Take care. Be well.
You too. Thanks.
All right.